Hello and welcome, Sumo fans, to another episode of Inside the Dohyo with me, your host, Scott Findlay, and as always, my amazing co-host, John Traill. John, how you doing, mate? Thanks for being with me today again.
Well, it's a bit wet in Australia at the moment, so for the first time ever, I'm
Floods.
put the moashi out in the sun so they don't grow. Like normally they're very resilient and bacteria free, but I think I could grow mushrooms this winter.
Well, today, guys, we have a very, very special guest with us, author of the latest sumo book to hit the shelves, The Way of Salt, a sumo enthusiast of nearly 3 decades who's lived in Japan since 1992, soaking in the culture and the sport, and now sharing his knowledge and experiences with all of us in written form. He's also a moderator of the popular Facebook sumo group, Sumo, where I'm sure most of you will know his name from, Ash Warren. Ash, thank you so much for joining us to talk about your new book. Welcome. How are you?
I'm very well, mate, and it's a great pleasure to be on your podcast with you and John. I've enjoyed your company for many years, so thank you very much for having me on tonight.
Brilliant, mate. Well, it's great to have you, and I'm excited about getting into your book and asking you about it and what our listeners can expect for it. So, if you don't mind, mate, I'll just get straight into the questions, and we'll get a lot covered and get it out there.
Go for it.
Okay. Brilliant. So, I would love to start with the obvious question. Your book, mate, what is it about? What is it telling everybody?
Right. Well, I think the answer to that question is basically it fills a gap, I think, in the market, which I think if you go to any bookshop or you have a look online, over the last years particularly, you'll see there's basically nothing in English, or very little in English anyway, about sumo. But sure. I think my book, the difference with my book and what it's about is in the title, which is obviously it's about sumo, and it's about the culture of Japan, and it's the way these two things fit together. And what I found in looking around before I started writing the book, and looking around in sumo books, is basically there's a lot of books out there, or some books out there anyway, about what is mawashi and all this sort of thing, basic sumo information, which people which is useful for people. But there isn't really anything about sumo and how that fits into Japanese culture. And that's the thing I particularly wanted to concentrate on in this book, and to take it beyond just being a sport and a fight, and showing it as part of the actual culture of Japan. So that's basically what the book is about, and that's implied in the title itself.
Aye, well, mate, that's when I read your book, that is what I took for it as well. That it was an introduction into the culture behind it as well, which that's the main fascinating part that I found about it myself.
When you found yourself researching the book, did you find you found a lot of tidbits that you never knew? Like I find whenever anybody asks a question online, even if it's the most trivial question, the simplest question, I always try to come away with something different out of it. Like, for example, talking about mawashi this week during the basho, when the gyoji stepped in and tried to stop a couple of moving targets to do up their mawashi with them in the
yes,
always with the controversy here, John. Always with the controversy.
I'm so pleased you brought this up.
So what I've also found out that on the periphery is if the front of your mawashi, the envelope bit, touches the dohyo,
yes,
you're not out. But if the bit, the undercarriage, comes
I like
off,
that
then you lose it. You lose the bout. But it's kind of interesting why, if you lose anyway, if the mawashi comes off, why is the gyoji interfering? But then I actually found out the real the actual regulations. The gyoji is meant to start tightening it up if the mawashi comes up towards the breasts.
Right. Is that the actual regulation?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Yeah, I mean, this is these are all the fascinating tidbits that you do learn in the process of talking to people like you, and also talking to folk on the websites about this. I mean, I'm presuming if the undercarriage bit touches the ground, or you're touching the ground as well as But yeah, I mean that's an interesting. This is the whole thing, I think, which I think is sadly lacking in some of the commentary that you get in sumo these days, which is basically about the fight itself. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with knowing what's going on in this fight, except for the fact that most of us can see it for ourselves. What you don't get is all the fascinating little tidbits like this, which actually are the things that make sumo interesting. And so, yeah, when I was researching the book, I absolutely found out lots of little things, which were very, fascinating little details. And it sees, when I first, like I was saying in a post earlier this week, which I don't think you liked very much, but anyway, I was talking about when I came to Japan in 1992, like you, same month, same year, as you said in the introduction to my book, which is there.
That's code, everybody, for the two of them are old. That's just code.
We're all friends. We
are
very old. John and I.
Same witness protection program, different crimes.
We used to, John's got better hair though. But anyway, when I first came to Japan, like John, no doubt. I mean, I sort of learned a lot of stuff of listening to commentators like Dorian Simmons. And one of the things she always used to do she always used to bring to sumo was a comprehensive understanding, not just of the sport itself, but also the culture. And she would talk about all the little details like this, like what's the roof about? And why are those tassels different colors? And why does this gyoji do this fight? And why is this guy not wearing shoes? And all these little details about sumo, which I found actually, this is what I find about sumo as in comparison with other sports. It is an incredibly deep sport. It's full of fascinating little details. It's built on top of a 2,000-year-old culture. And that makes sumo an incredibly rich experience for anybody who wants to go beyond looking at it just as a fight and to see it as part of the culture itself. And I think that's the thing that you really get. And, whether you're writing a book or whether you're just, your average sumo fan, you can get so much more out of a sport like sumo than you can out of, like, for example, dare I say it, baseball. And it's absolutely more than golf. So, there's all this, interlacing ideas with culture and that feed into sumo, and I think that's what makes it a fascinating thing. So yeah, absolutely, the research, I learned loads, and I'm still learning loads. And one of the people I've learned loads off is John, actually, because I often talk to John on the various sites over the years, and he's if I don't know anything, he's my go-to guy.
I try and tell people this.
Have him.
I try and tell people that he's such an encyclopedia of sumo. It's
don't
ridiculous.
Forget to send me the money, John. Okay.
No,
I'm doing what you told me.
This is exactly why I got John to be the one to bring up the about the question we wanted to ask you about doing the research in the book, because it was John who, see, every time maybe I'm getting asked a lot of questions and I'm trying to answer things, and some of them are just the same thing over and over and over again. It's him that always reminded me, that is how you learn, but there's always something to learn, as you said, a 2,000-year-old culture it's built upon. So there is so much to learn. And that basically, I know, Ash, covers another question I had for you, that why did you become such a huge sumo enthusiast and follower yourself? And that pretty much covered it in your answer there. I don't think you could give another better answer than that without even trying. So let me ask you this. But The Way of Salt, the title, what was the inspiration behind using that exactly?
I was looking at the book when I received the first copies of the new edition, actually a week ago, and I was looking at the book and I was thinking, I dreamed this title up when I was cycling to university one day on my bicycle. I thought, wow, that little thing that little thought has sort of turned into this, this book and the 2 years of work that we sort of put into it afterwards as well.
Aye.
So yeah, the way of salt is a reference of, obviously, as you probably are aware, to Shinto, and salt, of course, is the act of purifying the Dohyo, throwing the salt, which is called shibatsu. And in throwing the way of salt, basically is a reference to sumo as being, deeply connected to many Shinto ideas, and Shinto is a religion of purity. So there's two most important things in Shinto, which you can see if you read the book, which is purity and impurity. And basically, in order to approach the gods, which is something that is fundamental to sumo in the old days anyway, you had to be pure. So Shinto is pure, they purify themselves, and people going to Shinto shrines wash their hands and mouth and things like that. So yeah, this is a reference to that. Yeah.
Interesting, this week somebody was asking why they don't throw salt in the other divisions, and it turns out that you can't, they only earn the right to do
money.
It. Yeah, people, they can only do it when there's enough time. And then somebody was suggesting, oh, maybe the others aren't as religious. And you've covered that in your book about the, even though they're not overly religious, in Japan, they choose when they want to be Shinto, when they want to be Buddhist. But sumo is enshrined in Shintoism, isn't it?
Yeah, I think this is an interesting historical question. I think you could do a whole podcast about this, actually, the history of Shinto and sumo, because, there are different ways to look at it. For example, when we look at it from the sumo point of view, a lot of these sumo traditions of stamping on the ground and things like this, these ideas, to drive away evil spirits, these ideas hark back even to pre-Shinto ideas 3,000 years ago, this shamanistic type of Shinto that they had before this, because it's the idea of driving away evil and and beckoning good towards them is a very, very ancient idea. So yeah, I mean, yeah, obviously this is Shinto is reflected in sumo. There's many other ways to look at it as well. For example, you can talk about looking at it just as a sport. Now, I think to most folk during the Edo period, for example, they weren't particularly looking at sumo as this great Shinto ritual. Okay, and this is when it really took off more as a sport than as a cultural sort of emblem of of purity and all the rest of it. Then and pray and a sort of prayer for the good fortune of the nation, the harvest and things like that. So there's different ways of looking at this at different people, and this is why today too there's different ways of looking at sumo. You can look at it just as a sport, and it's very entertaining, and that's great. Or you can see it not just as a sport, but also as a cultural emblem as well. And when you see it in both those terms, I think that's where the real benefit is too.
So let me bring this up to you, Ash. What I found really interesting about reading your book is when you had mentioned when you moved to Japan and you began doing the tea ceremony, and how you brought into your book how that ties in with the culture of not just making tea, but also in their martial arts or anything that they do, the sort of mindset of the Japanese culture and how they follow that. And it's never really, of course, they want to master these things and become good at them, but it's not really set goals. It's always a process forever. So can you take us through that a wee bit and why you felt it so significant to add to the book?
Yeah, I think when you look at the sumo lifestyle, it's really evident that this is a process. This is a lifestyle, And as I said in the book, you've got most of the Japanese martial arts and a lot of the cultural arts as well, like tea, end in the kanji do. Do means life. So you've got judo, the way of gentleness, and you've got sumo. You've got sado, way of tea, and you've got aikido, and you've got kendo. Anyway, the way of the sword. And these basically when you talk about the way of something, you're basically talking about a process. You're talking about a different, an approach to doing something, which is not about goals. Now, and I think this is one of the interesting things in Japanese culture, is that the process, the journey, is always much more important than the destination.
Right.
And that's the fascinating thing I was sort of pointing out in the book. Now, for example, you've got the idea I was mentioning in the book is a famous story, I think, about karate, which was mentioned in the founder of Okinawan karate's book. Actually, I've forgotten the actual title of the book, but he was mentioning in his story the fact that there were no belts. So you started karate, they gave you a clean uniform, a clean gi, karate gi, and they gave you a white belt because, it was white and, it was new. And then you practice and practice and practice and practice. And eventually the idea that the belt was dirtier and dirtier and dirtier, and eventually it was a black belt. That was the black belt. The gradings in belts were actually only introduced in judo later on, and later on adopted by karate to express, for mainly for foreigners who wanted to feel like they're, naturally foreigners are more linear about these things and they want to feel that they're achieving certain levels. There's nothing wrong with that. But the idea behind a lot of the Japanese arts is this process. And so when I started the tea ceremony, and believe me, hardly any guys do tea ceremony. I mean, like it's 99% women in Japan. My wife actually got me interested in it, and she already had a teacher's license in the Mote Senkei school. And when we moved to Tokyo and got together, she encouraged me to do it. So I started doing it with her. And eventually we both got teaching licenses in the Ura Senkei school, which is the big one in Japan. And what I found in the process of doing tea, learning something like tea, which was the first really Japanese thing I really learned, was that, you just rocked up to your lesson, you did what you had to do, and you went home. No one was pushing you to get to the next level, to get to the next belt or whatever, that there were sort of licenses you could get eventually. And eventually one day my tea teacher, as I mentioned in the book, came around to me and said, oh, you've been doing this for 5 or 6 years now. You're ready to have your teacher's license. And I said, oh, look, that's impossible. I'm not any good at this. I absolutely can't be a teacher of this. And she said, no, don't worry about that, because it's a life study. You will get better at it. You will continue on this, and you will approach that level. So it doesn't matter, in the study of the Japanese arts and in the study of Japanese martial arts too, what level you're going to. And this can actually be a distraction, because once you get the black belt, what's next? And the answer is, and if you don't have that approach in the beginning, if your approach in the beginning is simply to continue this, to let it define you, to be this thing, this person, then that's where that's how these things interlock. And sumo is particularly like this because it's a lifestyle.
See, next, we're going to get John to take you through some quick fire questions, right? And we're going to see what sort of answers
now
you
this is scary.
John has said that they're all based on your book, but who knows if John's telling the truth about that or not. That's yet to be seen. But before we get to that, mate, I just wanted to ask you something about your book. See, your book, is it going to be available in other languages for people?
There is a French translation underway as we speak.
Brilliant.
So we will have a French translation of it out. If there's any Spanish publishing companies out there who would like to get onto this, I'm very interested in hearing from you too. But
absolutely,
there is going to be a French translation, and they're working on it now. So hopefully that will be out maybe next year, I guess. I don't know.
But before we get to that, guys, we have got a fantastic giveaway for you all. Ash Warren has kindly and graciously agreed to sign a copy of his fantastic book and send it directly to one of you amazing listeners. And the only thing that you have to do to win this book is comment on this video, like it, and let us know your thoughts.
All right, Ash, I'm going to start off with something that's
this is scary.
part of a dementia test. I'm going to give you 5 words, and I'm
no.
going to ask you at the end if you remember them. Yeah, I'm going to ask you if you can rank them for us. So not whether you remember. So your wife, family, sumo, sushi, and sleep. So that's wife, family, sumo, sushi, and sleep.
Careful, Ash.
Obviously, my wife, because she's listening.
That's why I put
my
that one
family,
first.
my family, because my son will listen too. and Sumo, yeah, Sumo pop in there. The next one, actually, I think that's actually pretty well in order. Sleep, yeah, I don't get a lot of that. What was the other one?
Sushi, just for
Sushi, yeah, definitely. I
eating
love
Japanese
sushi.
food.
Yeah, I
I
absolutely
used
love
to
sushi.
say,
It's good.
I used to say to people, I'm fluent in the 3 S's: sex, sumo, and sake. And one guy who was obviously a virgin said, "Oh, what about the 4th one, sleep?" And I said, "Oh, that can wait."
They can come after him. That's the last one. Yeah.
All
Okay.
right, now you're ready. The
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready.
Eastern seniority system or Western merit system?
Oh, I'm going to go with a hybrid system of the two. I'll tell you why too, which is in the book, which I know that's why you're asking me, Michelle. This is the sumo system, of course, is based on the seniority system, as are a lot of traditional Japanese businesses, and I think that's the interesting thing about the difference between the sumo, the seniority system, and the sumo and the merit system, is that the seniority system rewards loyalty. It rewards commitment to the company or to whatever you're doing. In sumo, it's basically that you hung in there for years and years and years. So the seniority system is an interesting thing because basically it's rewarding an emotional commitment, right? Now that's not a very capitalistic thing. The merit system, on the other hand, is rewarding what you've done to get a better bottom line, what you've done to physically create some, merit or difference, for your group or company or something like that. So it rewards that.
Handshakes or bowing?
Bowing.
Social media for Rixi or keep censoring it?
Keep censoring it.
Unlimited foreigners or maintain the limits?
Unlimited.
Is the senpai kohai relationship bullying or nurturing?
Well, is it nurturing? Nurturing.
The Banzuke rankings, are they fair or unfair?
Deeply unfair, and nobody understands them. Not even the guys that are writing the damn thing. So, yeah. I mean, you might as well use the Ouija board. The Ouija board is very similar,
The daily matchups, are they rigged or objective?
I think they're a form of gambling. I think that's what they do in the back room. It's like cards. You lose your time.
With the Yakuza?
No, absolutely not. No, absolutely not.
Tell us about that absurd claim during the week that.
During the week, about the people somebody was claiming that because he didn't like the result of some bout, obviously the Yakuza fixed it. I'm going to offend all the religious people here because it's a very similar thing, right? It's like people sort of, we don't understand what causes lightning, so God did it, So we don't understand why, Takakeisho lost his bat. It must have been the Yakuza,
10,000 hours to become an expert, accurate or not?
Not accurate.
Gino Sho or Kanto Sho? Would you prefer the Techniques Prize or the Fighting Spirit Prize?
The Kanto Sho, the Fighting Spirit Prize.
Favorite woodblock print?
Oh, that's
Sumo.
hard.
No, not the nude ones. No, the sumo ones. Thanks.
Not the shunko. Which one? The famous woodblock prints of Sumo. I don't actually know a lot about that. I really like woodblock prints, but they're all like 19th, 20th century ones. And I like people like Kauai and people like that. They're very nice. But yeah, I'm not actually an expert on sumo prints at all. I wouldn't go there.
All right. Now the next questions are general. Miso or shoyu or salt-based chanko?
Miso.
Mongolians or Japanese will be the next yokozuna.
Oh,
Mongolian.
oh, the next yokozuna. Probably Mongolian. I'm going to go with.
I agree.
I've sort of got a feeling. There's so many interesting things happening at the moment. You know, there's a bunch of guys there. I think Hoshoryu, Kiribayama, people like that. There's also, even Ichinojo. I mean, maybe you never know. Could come good. I don't know. I wouldn't put money on it, but there's a bunch of Mongolians there which are very interesting. I would definitely say so, and yeah, probably Mongolian.
All right. Carry on after Ozeki demotion or retire?
Carry on. Definitely carry on. Don't give up
Knee,
because you lost a rank.
Yep. Knee surgery or fight on?
Fight. Knee surgery. Definitely. Do the knee surgery. Just do the surgery and come back. Yeah.
Raised dohyo or flat dohyo?
Raised.
32 wins. Sorry.
Sorry, go on. Go ahead.
Oh no, what was about because we do have the Flat Dohyo Society, and they're
the Flat Dohyo. That's a very good phrase. The Flat Dohyo Society. Yeah, I think the Flat Dohyo Society is fine in practice. But the raised dohyo is a traditional thing, and I think that's part of sumo culture. So yeah, I've got no problems with that. And also, the majority of accidents don't result from falling off the dohyo.
So. John has just named a full section of sumo fans. He's just branded them. Brilliant.
yeah. Thank you, John.
I'm sure it's already out there. Now, if you're promoted with 32 wins to Ozeki, are you a legitimate Ozeki or not?
No.
Takanohana or Akebono?
Takanohana. Technically much better. Akebono's a great wrestler, but he didn't know what the Mawashi was. I don't think he'd ever seen it in his life, except that they put it on him.
He did the honourable thing. They told him,
went out. Yeah.
Stop using your big wingspan. And so he goes, all right. And he went for the with the belt just to prove that he could. And he did it. Asashoidu or Hakuho?
Hakuho.
Shodai or Shonan Sakura?
You disagree with that? You're going to go for Asashoidu?
I do disagree with that, mate. I'm sorry. I just out the two of them, but I don't think that Hakuho would have been the level he was at without having to chase after Asashoru.
Oh, sure.
You know what I mean? I don't think Asashoru would have finished on 25 Yusho if he would have went longer, but that is speculation. Absolutely. Do you know what I mean? But
no, I agree with you.
My opinion is that, and I absolutely love him, and he's like the be-all, end-all. Just in my opinion, he's like my favourite all-time, so I'm probably just a wee bit biased to him, to be fair.
No, absolutely. I fully agree with you. I mean, Asashoru would have definitely clocked up maybe 35, 40 Yusho even, and it would have been much better to have him in there with Hakuho. Much better.
Enho or Minomi?
Minomi. That's a very interesting question. Yeah. I've been talking about Midori Fuji for the last week, because I think he's like the improved version of Enho. But, I really think he's like Enho 2.0, much better.
That's
much
what
better
I call, sorry to interrupt you, mate, but that's what I call Ichi Yamamoto. I don't know if it's maybe cheeky, but I call him Abe Light. I call him Abe 2.0 and Abe Light. Do you know what I mean?
I agree. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Yamamoto is one of my favorites. I'm very much hoping he gets his act together. He can be good. Him and Oho too could be much better too.
I agree. Poor Oho, full of pressure, but look who his dad and his granddad is. Do you know what I mean? I can understand. He knows that the eyes of Japan are looking at him while he wrestles.
Yeah. Hoshoryu too.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
The punishments, are they too harsh or not harsh enough for naughty
W-
Rishi?
Well, it depends. I mean, I think they're fair in some ways, because I think, I think you're talking about Asanagama here, Um, I think you have to see this in context of Japanese society, and that Ozeki are, supposed to be in Japanese society, people who are well known, and that includes pop stars, movie stars, everybody, are supposed to be morally perfect as well. It's the exact opposite of what you get in America, where, if somebody, if you're a rock, if you're a rock star and you've had 72 divorces, if you go continually stoned on LSD, and people will look at you and say, well, so what? He's a rock star. But, in Japanese society, in Korean society, also in China as well, in Asian society, if you're a well-known person, and that includes Ozeki and Yokozuna particularly, you're supposed to be a moral example to others. And for the tired salaryman who, can't go to the bar because of COVID and things like that, and then he finds out that his idol, this person who's supposed to be, a representative of, moral virtue, is out drinking at the hostess bars, 10 times a week. People in Japanese society take that seriously. They think that that is very, very bad, and they want to see these guys punished hard. So I think Westerners sort of think, oh my God, all he did was go drinking, and they've given him this terrible penalty, that he's, completely lost his career and stuff like that. But they don't really realize the way that Japanese people look at, well-known celebrities and Ozekis and Yokozuna and things like that. And people in Sumo is the most conservative of all of them. And so you can expect that type of reaction. And the Kyokai reflect that, when they give out a penalty. So, I don't think it's particularly unfair what's happened to them, actually.
It's a fair answer,
Do
mate.
you think it's a deterrent? Do you think
Oh,
it's
yeah,
deterrent?
absolutely a deterrent. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
The death penalty
Very
is not
much
a
so.
deterrent in some situations.
Well, after
yeah.
you've got the death penalty, you can't do much, you can't reoffend.
Yeah,
That's a
fair enough.
deterrent. You're deterred from reoffending.
Right. Of being a repeat offender. All
Yeah.
right, and going back to what we were discussing at the beginning before we started,
Yep.
Hiro or Raja?
Oh, please don't say that. Raja's okay.
Right. All right, Raja or Ross?
Ross, absolutely.
Ross or Murray?
Ross.
Now, Ash, do you remember at the beginning of the the questions that I just given you? I gave you 5 words. Do you remember what they were?
Wife, family, sumo, sushi, and sleep.
Yeah. Now you're happy with that order?
Wife, family, sumo, sushi, and sleep. Yes, I'm happy with that order.
All right. Yeah, I think. Yeah,
Does that mean I have dementia?
No, it means you're a genius. It means you're a genius. 3 words or less explains then.
69. There's 2 letters.
Dinner for
That's
2.
the meaning of life. It's the meaning of life.
True. Very true. Very true.
There you are. You had a rapid fire answer. That's the best I can do on short notice.
Oh, brilliant. Brilliant. Well, they were great answers, and I hope all of you guys enjoyed that as much as me and John enjoyed going through it with Ash. So, mate, please tell all our listeners where your book is going to be available to buy.
The French copy, I suppose, will be available on Amazon France, but the rest of it, is available on Amazon, and it's also available on Barnes and Noble, and it will be available on a lot of other smaller bookshop sites as well, because this is spread. It'll be available globally, so it'll be in bookshops not just in the UK, US, but in the UK and other places as well.
So before we end the show, I would just like to remind you all that I have left all the links to all the platforms where you can go and purchase your own copy of The Way of Salt. Go and get it now. Do it right now. Go. Hurry up. The link's in the description. Go. Right, guys, and with that, that brings us to the end of this episode. I want to thank my co-host John for joining me as always, and I'd like to thank Ash Warren for coming in and taking the time to talk about his book.
It's been an honor and a pleasure.
Aye, good, mate. I'm glad you had fun with us. I'm glad you
I did.
fun. And guys, remember, like, subscribe, hit that bell. Oh, what a nugget!
What's on this?
What